Hello and welcome at this tutorial where we're going to talk about multi-stage applications. Why are multi-stage applications more powerful than single-stage applications, and then also how to make your secondary data set for your multi-stage application. First of all, it's important to understand why you want to use a multi-stage application. As humans, we unconsciously see things in multi-stage as well. If I would ask you to look at your calendar, to find a date and to read the month, what you will do unconsciously, you'll find the calendar first, then you'll look for the text for the month, and then you'll start reading it. It's in 3 stages. This happens the same with object detection, but you have to carefully think about if you want to use it and if it's the right architecture for solving your problem. You can of course always try it out, make a single stage application, do a multi-stage and test the quality differences. Few use cases that you can do multi-stage is, for example, PPE detection. In this particular case, we see a bunch of guys not wearing a helmet, wearing their vest though, and as you can see, it's detecting this is a single stage application. So on the live view, you will not see the difference, but in the analytics you will, because the person not wearing the helmet you would like to get a crop from, or a face, or a detection, or especially in large crowds, you want to identify uniquely what person is not wearing a helmet, for example. And in this particular case, a multi-stage application would not do it like this, not individual to the person. It would first do the person detection, will crop that out, and that second stage model will receive the crop and then look for the helmet. And in this case, you get a person which is 99% of the crop that is being sent to it, and therefore the helm is much bigger in terms of pixels than what you would get if you would send this to a model. This is, for example, a 4K resolution, but AI models are resizing it back to 640 by 640. If you have in-camera processing, it's even 128, so it's tiny. So you go from a very nice 4K frame suddenly to a 640 by 640 ratio. That's simply the compute limitations of AI. And in server processing that you're using from us, it's already 640 by 640. So that helmet is still pretty visible, even though it's resized from 4K. But if you crop the person, you set an original 4K crop, which is maybe 320 by, what would this be, 500 for example, and you then only scale it back to 320 by 320, the pixel loss is very small. And therefore, multi-stage applications reach far more superior accuracy than single-stage applications. Another example why it could be useful is, for example, in this one. You see a lot of containers and you see a lot of numbers. The goal of this application is to read container numbers. But if you would label the container numbers on the top, because you want to read the one that is in the spreader, you will confuse the model a lot, because there are containers here in a barge which is next to it, there is a container on board, so you would get numbers detected all over the place. So what do we do instead? We have a first stage model that is trained to detect container in spreader, and then that crop is sent to a second stage model where container number is labeled. So it will not know, and it's not taught to detect these container numbers that are in the surroundings. We also, as humans, say, if the container is in the spreader, then that is the number we want to pick. That's also how we built this application. So how can you do that in our platform? Let's make a multi-stage application. Multi-stage gun detection test. We'll make it a multi-stage application. We are creating it, and in the first stage we are going to add a model, multi-stage people test, object detection, and we just pick our person detection algorithm. It's already good, it works, you don't need to touch it. So that's our first stage. Then here on the top we go to stage 2, we add a model, and we do guns multi-stage test. We're going to pick object detection. We are starting from scratch because there is no base model that does specifically gun detection. And then we're going to make, I already pre-did this, we're going to create a data set, guns to detection. We're going to make it a secondary data set. We're going to keep with object detections, and we're going to do gun and weapon. That's the classes we want to label within the person. Then this is the moment we're going to crop our humans. Because remember, we're going to first look at the human, find the human very accurately, and then look if there is a gun inside. This also limits a lot of false detections around people. I mean, there can be a shape of a gun somewhere in some shade. It's not being detected because the model will first look for the person. We have a people CCTV and gun data set. We are at version 6, that's my last one. And I want to crop the persons. So I'm going to crop the images. I already did it for this particular case. But we're going to press crop images, and then you're getting your second stage cropped data set. I'm going to select it. And here I can label my data. What is important to note, when you are labeling your first stage model, like I did here, I labeled persons. I labeled it because I made this data set specifically a first stage algorithm. But you see that I labeled the persons quite with tight boxes. The backpack is falling off a bit and the gun is not visible. So when you label in a first stage, it's important to think about any attributes that are in the length of the person. Here you won't see it too much, but for example, here at this person, the gun, I didn't label. So it's very important to think about this in advance. Now here you see I labeled the person, you see the gun, and suddenly you also maybe understand my point, what I talked about earlier on with the pixels. If this is being cropped or being downsized by an algorithm by half, the gun is still a pretty good percentage of what is being sent to the model. If you would have a whole 4K resolution, which you scale back to 320 by 320, and in our case, because we use powerful servers, you can do 640 by 640, the crops of the gun, or the pixels of the gun are very, very tiny and limited. So you can label the data, then you can train a model, what you're used to, and then in deployments, we're going to make a deployment. You'll see that here we have select first stage model and select second stage model. So we're going to select the first stage and we're going to do the second stage. And the rest of the flow is exactly the same. I encourage you to test this. Be aware that first in your first stage model, you have to label your data right. So I would always label first with the goal of making a single stage application, like you saw me when I imported the labels here in the data set, because I had already a data set that had people, gun and weapons labeled. Now when you make your data set, always label it as if it's just a single stage application, because then you can always turn it into a multi-model and then compare it. So my gun detection single stage application already had guns and weapons labeled. So I can easily test single stage with multi-stage, because you can crop the persons and within the crops you can label. So I encourage you to always go for single stage first, label everything you want, and then you can always test out a multi-model second stage applications. If you're very sure in advance, like the example I showed you on the containers, then do it straight away in a multi-stage application. We understand that this is a bit complex, but we also want to go for the best results and the most sustainable long-term performing models. So if you have any question, please feel free to ask our chatbot here on the left side. We are monitoring answers all day long, and we are also using it to improve it. So your question definitely is not getting lost. And if you really don't know what to do, ask your system integrator or contact us. We are more than happy to give you advice and help you. Thank you so much. Please watch the next tutorial, and I hope you learned something from this, and good luck making your multi-model applications. Thank you. Have a nice day.